may ask you to respond and so on, and we'll take it from there. Towards the end, I'll show you a couple of our current participants who are going through this program, a certification program, and what they have to say about what they have learned from this. So with that, Don, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. I appreciate that. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for giving up your afternoon. Just put your seatbelts on, get ready for a fun ride. And this will give you a little bit of background on why neuroscience, why now, why is it important, what's the big deal? You may have heard something about it the past couple of years. And that neuroscience actually is changing the way we do business globally. It is changing the way that we manage people. It is changing the way we develop people. It's changing the way that we teach and train and grow people. So all sectors across the globe are now being influenced by neuroscience. So it's becomes more important for other individuals who are coaches, who are HR, who are business leaders, who are owners, parents, and even yourself to understand how neuroscience actually is influencing everything that we do. So with that, I just want to get into why I created the program. There's a lot of tools out there and a lot of programs out there talking about neuroscience, and some of it is actually very good, but a lot of it is a lot of jargon speak. So a lot of scientific information, a lot of scientific jargon that, probably at your level, you're not really that interested in participating in some of that. You just want to know, what is it that I need to know? What are the benefits? And how does it help me move on to the next level? So I created a program that literally takes the social neuroscience and behavioral neuroscience information into bite-sized, easily understandable tools and techniques to help you understand how the brain learns, grows, and behaves under social settings. The neuroscience that we talk about is social neuroscience. So it's actually a branch of science that is literally revolutionizing the way that we all think, the way we have to now rethink about things that we just thought about not even less than 5 years ago, but certainly 15, 25, 30 years ago. The way that though we used to think about how the brain develops has changed. And it's changing every day because we're getting new from situations that allows us to see what's going on in the brain at real time. So we started the program off with Meet Your Brain, which allows you to understand why change sometimes can be difficult, how habits are formed and how habits play a big role in everything that we all do. Knowing certain things versus doing certain things. How does that play in a business setting or even just in your personal life? And also trust. What is trust? Everything that we do with other human beings is truly based upon trust. And you see how trust is spelled there because each one of those letters actually represents something that is important to us as human beings. And I'll get into that just a little bit. So neuroscience has applications to coaching and also across every sector that's out there. As a coach, it's always important to know what your clients potentially are thinking and the things that may be blocking them. If you're working with another person, you are actually working with their brain. So you have to now have an understanding or an awareness of what is possibly going on in that person's brain, as well as what's going on into your brain. Neuroscience can provide several solutions. It allows you to be able to understand what neural networks are involved in establishing and taking action towards achieving goals. Every day we hear about, I need to be able to do this. I want to be able to accomplish this. I don't have enough time to do this. Well, some of that boils down to something as simple as we don't, and we never did multitask. I know a lot of people think, oh, I'm a great multitasker, but science has proven no one multitasks. We task switch. And when we go from one task to the next task, it takes 40% more time to come from where you were on the first task to get up to speed on the second task. And so that's why there's a lot of emotional burnout when people are in high stressed areas where there's a lot of tasks that need to be done, where no one's taken the time to understand what are the task requirements of that situation or that job function. Without understanding what's really required, then you move into this very slow burnout. You're increasing more cortisol within your own body, norepinephrine, and it's not a good situation. That's when people become very stressed. The brain uses about 20% of all of the energy. And so if you're in a high stress situation, you've used your 20%. And so now you begin to shut down. You're easily angry. Your prefrontal cortex is no longer in control. Your limbic system, which is where the emotional seat of the brain actually lives, that takes control. And now you have other issues that you probably weren't prepared for. So understanding how neuroscience works in a social setting, it allows all of us to be able to understand how to become more self-reliant, gain more job satisfaction, contribute more effectively to the team and to the organization. These are all very basic things that we want people to do every day, but sometimes our brains get in the way and we don't really understand really what's going on. Being able to communicate effectively is very important, especially now in COVID-19. I work with a team of mental health specialists here in Australia and around the world, and I get calls every day. And the bulk of those calls are around communication. Well, someone doesn't talk to me properly, or someone is upset about something, or someone was easily upset. You know, COVID-19 is changing what was already there. So many people probably did not have very good communication skills with the people that they worked with. But now that they're at home and they don't have a place to go and vent, they now are letting all of these bad habits come out. Well, neuroscience is already helping people solve those problems with some very simple techniques that allows us to be more effective and more efficient from a people person perspective. So neuroscience is also changing the face of business. We're looking at business more from a brain-friendly perspective. Do we understand how that brain is going to respond in a social situation? We know that by talking differently allows a person to understand the why of something that is going on within a business environment. And it also teaches us the how of how we get to from point A to point B. What is it that's going to make us more productive? What is this going to make us more successful? If you're a coach, then you're probably bombarded with, well, I want to change something, or I want to stop doing something. If you're a team leader, then you've got to be responsible for making sure productivity keeps moving. If you're a leader yourself, you got to figure out how to energize your team. Well, the old methods we've known for quite some time really don't work. What we know works is a place that people can feel safe and or they can be trusted, or they can trust you. And so trust is something that is very, very important in this new arena. So we have to be able to create or release a certain hormone called oxytocin. If you can release more oxytocin within another human being, then bonding begins to occur in a very healthy way, and trust goes up. When trust goes up, man, it's a game changer. So that's really, really powerful. So that is one very specific way that business settings are actually changing. Google, Apple, excuse me, Facebook, eBay, these are all companies that have adopted, at least internally, ways of being able to talk with other people that are more brain friendly. Long gone are the days where we can talk to people any way that we choose to talk to them in a very rough manner. Excuse me 1 second. Excuse me. So neuroscience is helping us come to a place of awareness of actually how to be more effective with other people. Neuroscience also is teaching us this very fancy word called epigenetics and how that influences business in organizations. And epigenetics just means those things that are above the gene. It allows us to study heritable changes that do not change the gene expression. So your environment, your internal environment, your external environment, those now have an influence on your very behavior, your very belief, your very communications, your conversations, both with yourself and also with other people. So we are now looking at this very closely to hopefully create and influence people to think differently about themselves and also to think how they are actually influencing other people. So a few years ago, we were all excited and still probably still excited about emotional intelligence. And if you recall, area number one is those things that you know about yourself and those things that influence what you do and how you do. And area number two is being aware of how your belief, your behaviors, your actions influence everyone else. And that's really where we are. We're still within this emotional intelligence. Now we have social intelligence so that we can understand how to better or more effectively communicate with other people. We look at things such as information. What information are you providing to your coworkers? What information are you providing to yourselves that allows you to develop a concept of yourself? So when we look at information, it allows us to be more and more understanding of where do we get from how I think negatively to thinking more positively. So information plays a very strong and powerful role in developing that process. So this is very important to businesses. So for example, Apple does a very good job of advertising. So I think just recently they released their new, a series of Apple products. Think about their advertisement that they always do. So I just heard on the news the other day that the new Apple iPhone is already outsold and it hasn't even hit the market, I don't think, globally yet. And so they've outsold this. Why? Because of the information that they talk about from an Apple phone. All of the information that's on a very, 2-minute or 3-minute slick that says this is what Apple does, here's how it's going to benefit you, and here's how it's going to make your life a lot more happier. Well, that very process really speaks to the limbic system of your brain, which is the emotional center of the brain. And thereby it gives us a sense of empowerment or safety that if I buy an Apple phone, it is going to work. It is the best on the market, and I'm very excited about that. So information is very key. It always has been. We're just now beginning to understand it from a neuroscience perspective. By the way, if anyone has any questions, please go ahead and write those questions in the chat box or just raise your hand and I'll stop and go ahead and answer those questions. So as I was talking about earlier in terms of communication, one of the things that we have discovered is how conversational dynamics influence productivity or loss of productivity. And so how we talk to one another, how you talk to your production team, has been broken down from a neuroscience perspective, 3 levels or 3 types of conversation. Level number 1 is very transactional. Hey, Bob, how are you today? I'm fine. That's good. Hey, Bob, did you get that report done today? Yes, I did. So that's ask and tell. From an emotional perspective or from a neuroscience perspective, there's very little transaction that's happening within the 2 people who are asking the question. The hormones that are being released are normal hormones, so there's no bonding going on, so there's no oxytocin being released, so there's nothing really going on. Level 2 is positional. It's where you advocate and you require. Hey, Bob, can you tell me a little bit more about the project that you were assigned to? Well, again, there's nothing really going on. It's a one-way conversation. He's inquired about something, so Bob now has got to be able to supply that information. The best level from a brain perspective is level number 3, which is transformational. There's a true exchange of energy between the 2 parties where they share and they discover. Hey, Bob, I was reading your report last night and I saw that you had a few powerful suggestions. Can you tell me something a little bit more about it? Now, just that right there allows Bob to give more information. It shows that the team leader or the person asking the question is actually very interested in what they're doing and they want to know more. Well, we all enjoy giving out more information, especially if someone who's in charge of a project, who I'm on that team, they've actually asked me to give them a little bit more information because what I came up with seems or sounds like it's very exciting. So those very specific three levels of conversation actually either will influence a greater productivity or it will decrease the productivity depending upon where you fall. Level three is always the best place to go. Now, it does not mean that there isn't always going to be time for level one and level two. It just means level one and level two are not as creatively involving. The energy levels are usually going to be pretty low. And this is also where unhealthy emotional habits sometimes will come out. So understanding this basic three levels of conversation is pretty powerful from a productivity perspective, from getting things done perspective, and even talking with yourself. Self-talk now has become a very big deal. So for example, if we sometimes say, well, geez, I just made a dumb mistake, using the word dumb in front of the word mistake is always a recipe for disaster. Think about the time where someone may have offended you by calling you dumb, or you thought that you were dumb, which led to I can't do it, which leads to I'm not good enough, which leads to I'm never ever going to make it, or at least I won't make it as far. You also have the reverse, where people who have made mistakes, they've covered them up and they've risen to the top for whatever reason, but now they push other people in opposite directions. So sometimes we have to be very, very careful about how we utilize the words that we use to talk to ourselves. So what happens is that we now know roughly about 86 billion neurons makes up the brain. However, the connections between those 86 billion neurons comes to somewhere around 1.2 quadrillion connections. That's a lot of connections. So every time that you say as an individual, well, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, you're taking that 86 billion, you're multiplying it by 1.2 quadrillion, and your brain is moving that fast to come up with every scenario where you ever said, or it itself heard someone say that you were not good enough, or you're not smart, or I'm dumb, and then it looks for the actual outcome, and it will play that outcome each and every time. So we have to be careful about what we say to each other and how we say certain things to one another so that we can increase the hormone levels that we need to have, such as oxytocin, um, uh, uh, neoepinephrine, and excuse me, and serotonin and melatonin. So we have to be very careful, but we can control those ourselves. So the program teaches you how to utilize those techniques in order to be operating at your best. So when it comes to trust, trust is based upon a very powerful definition that is in neuroscience, which stands for transparency, relationship, understanding, shared success, and test assumption and truth telling. So when we really trust someone, this is how we're going to now live. Am I transparent enough? Do I understand what it means to be in a relationship with another person, even if it's your coworker? Do I understand your point of view? Do I stand in your shoes before I become angry and or upset? Do I have an idea, and have I shared my idea of what shared success actually looks like? And do I know how to test assumptions? And do I know how to do truth telling? Not telling the truth, but truth telling. We all have our version of truth, but then there is also the truth of a situation. And so when we're not threatened and we feel comfortable and we're in a trusting environment, we will test assumptions by asking better questions. Hey, the other day you said that. Can you give me a little bit more information about that? Oh, yeah, sure. It was non-threatening. When you give someone or tell someone what shared success looks like. So you give out a project, or you're talking to your children, or you're hanging out with your friends and say, hey, you know what, man, I bet you if we could do this, this is what this would look like. That would be the power of that. And so everyone has an idea of what shared success actually looks like. And if we all have this definition of what shared success looks like, then you're just going to keep and increase and move up the oxytocin levels. Do I really understand what it means to be in a right relationship or a healthy relationship? particularly after COVID-19 or during COVID-19, do I have the tools and resources to understand, listen, yes, I may be locked down. Yes, I may be going a little stir crazy, but do I understand how to maintain a healthy relationship? Do I still have enough information that allows me to speak with another person with a certain level of confidence and a certain level of calmness and a certain level of trust from me to them? These are all very important aspects that plays a huge, huge role and dividend on how we are either more productive or less productive. So we also want to be able to introduce certain tools out of our toolkit. And a few of those are very simple: letter of conclusion, the 4 reciprocal psychological needs. Every person on the planet has 4 basic psychological needs that they truly need to have. And they need to be at a consistent level, because if those 4 psychological needs, one of them happens to be uh, connection and attachment, the need for orientation and control, self-esteem, and the brain's organizing principle of pleasure maximization and avoiding pain at all costs. Now, the pleasure maximization is not the hedonistic pleasure, but if you do enjoy doing something with another human being, then your brain loves that pleasure. I like having a great conversation. I like watching, now that American football has started last week, I enjoy sitting down watching American football. So I know that my need for connection is very high because I enjoy watching the football. My orientation and control is very well in place. Think of orientation as your ability to literally look at your environment and you can do something within your environment. And the control simply is your ability to add things to your environment or take things out of your environment as you so please. So that's very important. And then the third one, which I mentioned, was self-esteem. We're the only mammals on the planet that require self-esteem. Without the self-esteem, it is very difficult to grow. It is very difficult to get along with others. It is very difficult to see someone else's point of view. And our self-esteem is so fragile because our self-esteem comes from how people view us within our environment and vice versa. So this is a very powerful one, understanding someone's self-esteem, how it can be very easily built up and how quickly it can be torn down. And then we have the wisdom of the 6 brains. So we do have 6 brains. They're not all up here. We have 3 up here. We have 1 over our heart, and we now have 1 in our gut. The 1 over our heart was discovered in 1902. And the current understanding of it is that series of neurons, its primary mode or primary function is for emotional learning. It literally sends more information to the rest of the body, including the brain, than the brain sends to it in the rest of the body. So that's a very powerful tool that literally just sits over our heart. So something that we now understand, how people are becoming so fractured and fragile, and people are now easily hurt because as this heart brain takes on more and more information. If it's negative information, it just passes that on to the rest of the body because it's saying, well, geez, Don just said something really hurtful to me. So that's going to send information to the emotional center of the brain, the limbic system, and it's going to actually talk to the amygdala. The amygdala now is going to communicate with the hippocampus, which is the seat of memory. And it's now going to remember every time that you hurt me or it hurt itself or someone else hurt you. And every time you hear Don's name, you're going to think, oh my gosh, this person hurt me. Or you hear a name, someone else's name, Don, the brain is going to go directly to that position. So this is very powerful. And if as coaches, as trainers, we understand that, very, very, very powerful stuff. And lastly, how the brain creates a concept of self. We talked a little bit about it earlier, that it all starts with the information that we receive. So if you have bad information, that information gets translated into one of the 5 senses. That information then gets translated into behavior. That information over time translates into meaning. And with that meaning, now that creates a concept of self. With that concept of self now, then we are able to filter other information and filter how we see someone and how we get into a situation where now we can form our biases and our objections to people, places, persons, and things. So information now plays a very important tool in how we begin to get along. Rajiv, were there questions? I saw a couple of hands or a couple of things in the box.
Not on the chat, but yeah, everyone, I mean, if you have a question, you could unmute and ask, or you could put it in your chat, right? Unless, Don, you're going to pick on people and ask questions.
Yeah, we may do that. I just wanted to also acknowledge Tanya, one of our coaching partners, is also on the line. So the face you see is Tanya. Tanya's all the way from Canada. So it's early in the morning for Tanya. So thanks for getting up very early in the morning, Tanya. I think it's about 7 o'clock or somewhere around there, and she looks like she has a cup of coffee. So thanks, Tanya.
Yes.
So utilizing.
We have a question here from Sarah. She's wanting, could you run through the 4 needs again, please?
Yes, so the first need is the need for attachment and connection. The second need is for orientation and control. The third need is self-esteem and the protections that self-esteem provides. And the last need is the need for pleasure maximization and pain avoidance. So what I'd like to do now is open it up just for a bit, since we're at the 30-minute mark and we have 30 more minutes. I'd like to find out from some of you on the call, has anyone heard of neuroscience, or is anyone using neuroscience with either in their coaching or their HR practices? Turn your mic on, Nirala.
Yes, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Dom. Thank you for the session and greetings, everybody. Yes, I do a lot of coaching internally for the organization that I work with. I do use some of the concepts that you've just mentioned about the 3 brains, but I didn't know it was 6. I just use the cephalic, cardiac, and enteric brains that I make reference to.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very keen, and I think it relates a lot to integral coaching. So I'm very keen to hear. I didn't quite catch the 6 brains. So at some stage, if you can repeat that or explain that again, I'd be very keen.
Yes. Yeah, 1 second. You just looks like your mic cut off again, so just give me a second. Tanya, if you can jump in there just for a second until I pull this up. And just introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Tanya Nestorenko. I'm currently in the Greater Toronto area, and I've been working with Don for about the past 2 years. What I've enjoyed most about what I've learned from Don, my background is actually in rehabilitation. My profession 1.0 is as a speech language pathologist. So part of what we do as a speech pathologist, rehabilitation, any kind of neurological disorder. And what I've actually thoroughly enjoyed is I learned from neuroscience from a rehab point of view. Well, coaching is about rehab. Coaching is about it is and it isn't. It's about building yourself back up in a different way. So 25 years ago, when I was completing my master's for neuroscience in rehabilitation, I learned a lot of this. However, what Don has brought is let's call it a reframe. Let's use the coaching word, reframe, to bring the understanding of ourself and the awareness, so that, because at the end of the day, we're all in control of our behavior. So therefore, we self-regulate our behavior to then influence. We don't control, we don't persuade other people. We engage in self-regulation towards co-regulation.
Thanks for that, Tanya. Appreciate it. So as we look at the 5 brains, and now listen, I'm not saying that within our massive brain housing here that we actually have 6 brains. What we have is, we know that we have the mammalian brain, or the reptilian brain. We have the limbic brain, which is the middle part of our brain. We have the neocortex, which is the outer or the newer part of the brain. And then we have the heart brain. And then we have the executive brain, or the prefrontal cortex, which has special circuitry up in its right around here that allows us to connect with other people. Lastly, we've also discovered a series of networks in our intestine, which also now represents our gut brain. It also sends information to the heart and to the brain itself. This was discovered during the Genome Project a few years back, as the scientists were mapping all of the human genome. They also took some of that money, and they also began to map into the gut. So we wanted to find out, why was Alzheimer's such a big deal? That's why you do hear that gut health literally relates to brain health. And so this entire learning illuminated a lot of information for us. So for example, we know that the brain itself is what is called plastic. I call it wet. In that the brain can literally change itself. So your brain literally has changed in the past 30 minutes that I have been talking. So we know that the brain gathers, or we are given roughly about 86 to 100 brand new neurons every single morning that we wake up, or whenever it is that you wake up. And it's usually found within the hippocampus region, which is where we do most of our memory work and learning, and particularly emotional learning. So that's really powerful to know that you can change. Knowing that little bit of information, if someone says, well, I can't change, I don't want to change, I can't do it. They can, they just have to be told or made aware of the things that they do get to do from what's happening with inside your brain. So very, very powerful information there that helps you as a coach. So did you get all 6 of those brains, Narala?
Yes, thank you. I'm understanding it better now. Thank you for repeating that, Dom.
Thank you. Yes, Tanya.
John, I'd also like to add, because part of what I had to do is that some of this information is quite at my fingertips, and some of this information is still becoming more automatic. I had to remind myself that one of the appreciations of my understanding of the 6 brains, and again, because this was new information, was that the synergy of all the neuroscience and the 6 brains working together, that shifts between the I-centric to the we-centric. And we all know one of our psychological needs is for connectivity and to be included. And this has really helped with my coaching and with my clients, help shift and reframe towards an I-centric way of being, towards a we-centric. And what does we mean? But we, right away, you're including. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you. So really, really powerful. And I think someone just sent, Raju, can you put that image up on the screen, please?
Sorry, which one?
Priya just sent us an image.
Oh, did she? Okay. While I look for that, meanwhile, one of the things that we could also do is we have one of our participants of the certification program who has joined us, Kamna, and maybe she can share how this program, what has she been doing with the knowledge that she has gained. And I'll meanwhile look for the image.
Okay.
So,
I
Kamna?
can.
Oh, hi, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Hi, Don. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Rajeev. Ever since I started this neuroscience basic course, I have sensed a lot of shift that has happened within me, within the choices that I've made, and be it my professional life, my personal life, and that is the reason that today I'm here, sharing a testimonial with you. Um, there is a certain amount of awareness that you develop about yourself, the way your brain functions. You understand it so much better. It's just not about the ability to say, uh, you know, uh, exercise better, sleep better, or see, there is a scientific reason behind everything that is said here, and that gets you a lot of buy-in with your clients. So why I'm saying buy-in is it is more tangible stuff. If I'm telling someone that tomorrow there is a specific thing called social exclusion when you experience that. So it is very clearly demonstrated in neuroscience that when you experience social exclusion, that pain is very similar to that of physical pain, and your brain functional MRIs have demonstrated that. And taking a Tylenol or a painkiller for both of these would help. And how amazing is that to know that? So when I say buy-in with tangible scientific facts and data, this is what Don has done for me at least and our entire group. And the cohort, the one that I'm attending, is that he's transferred all this complex scientific research and data into very, very tangible and easy to understand basics, which we have implemented into our style of coaching. I'm on my way to becoming a coach. So it has added another dimension to it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kemna. Rajiv, do you want to play that piece of information from Rachel?
I'll just share my screen.
Okay.
Hey guys, so I joined the neuroscience course in order to really fill in the gaps of knowledge about the brain for my clients and also, of course, for myself. So I'm learning a massive amount, like I'm continuously learning every step of the way. And it's so fantastic because what's happened is I'm able to really explain and give scientific reasoning and understanding for my clients to know why they do certain things and behave certain ways. And this has in turn impacted my coaching massively because I am now able to understand why my clients do certain things and behave certain ways. And I'm able to explain them to them much better. Whereas before, even though as a coach, I found it very easy to help people guide them through their issues, I wasn't ever really able to explain the things scientifically to them. So this course has been amazing in really just filling in all those gaps. The other thing is that it's actually impacted me massively in the way I deal with, say, my children. As a mother, I have really begun to understand how my behaviors and the way I think or the emotions and other things that I go through really impact them and how their brain is actually absorbing it. So understanding that. So if you guys are thinking about taking the course, I would highly recommend it because it has been amazing. The growth and the learning has just been continuous. And I think it's going to bring another level of, it's just going to bring another level to your coaching and to what you can bring to your clients and to yourself. So I really hope you guys join. I recommend it highly. Thanks for your time. Bye. Hey guys, so
Okay, so with the remaining time, because I know everyone has agreed to an hour, let's just open it up for questions. So does anyone have any questions for Tanya or myself?
And I think there is a comment on the chat from Anita. She's talking about sometimes I use some frameworks to help participants understand what's going on with them.
Yep. And what type of framework? Hi, Anita. What type of
Hi.
framework is that?
Well, it's about the three brains, you know, the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and the human brain, and it helps me explain to them, you know, the how to bring logic and rationale from the cerebral brain from the human brain into the other two brains. It also helps me exemplify a point that how important it is to keep the reptilian brain, you know, calm and relaxed, and the impact of stress, you know, triggering of your reptilian brains. And it helps me demonstrate the benefits of meditation practice to help calm some parts of the brain. So it helps me throw light on an individual person on what's happening inside. But what's new in what you just said in the past half an hour is the fact that it can be useful in an interpersonal, understanding interpersonal or social context, you know, in your communication, what you say and how you say it can impact the neurological, whatever impulses in another person's brain. That's a new perspective for me. And it would be interesting for me if you would shed more light on that point.
So thank you for your comment, by the way. So whenever
sorry, my lights are not on fully yet.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. When we enter into the space with another human being, our brains have already begun to communicate. We actually communicate chemically and hormonally before we actually open up our mouths. And it takes about 1/10 of a second for that to actually transpire. So have you ever walked into a room and you felt something wasn't right? Most of us have actually done that. And literally that was your bioelectromagnetic wave or field actually getting in contact with everyone else's bioelectromagnetic field. And when they're out of sync, you can think of it as warbling like this, and then one slows down and one starts turning again. That's actually rubbing up against each other. And you can actually feel that something is going on. Now, I suppose, you know, some people call it other things, but from a neuroscience perspective, we know it's our bioelectromagnetic field that we all have. And we can actually feel that from another human being. Now, since we've been on the call, all of our heart rates have actually come in with sync with one another. And that's pretty powerful because I think I'm at least 18,000 miles away from you guys. And Tanya's another, 15,000 miles away from where I am. And our heart rhythms are actually in sync as you've been listening. So that's pretty powerful. That's really where we come into play. And so we know that this part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, is responsible for that connection. That's why the human need for connection and attachment is so very powerful. And if we don't have the proper connection, no matter what environment we're happen to be in, then we're going to be off just a little bit, or the other person is going to be off just a little bit. So understanding how the four reciprocal psychological needs interplay is very powerful from a personal perspective, and also very powerful from a coaching perspective, also very powerful from a development perspective. So if a new employee comes on board and they don't attach very quickly with another person who's been there for a while, it takes them longer than 90 days to figure out what needs to be done. That is from a social perspective. They'll probably do very well from a task perspective, but they won't really fit in. And that's usually what happens, why good people wind up leaving, companies that have forgotten that we are people first and everything else second. Any other questions? Thanks for that, Anita.
I think Priya is raising her hand.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Don, I actually had a question that when we've been talking about neuroscience, is this kind of knowledge only restricted to HR leaders and coaches? Would it be, I mean, what kind of help can it leverage to people in the field of psychology, or, clinical psychologist or something like that? Or, people with mental, people who train for mental well-being?
Mhm. So neuroscience helps us to understand the how and why of stress. It helps us to understand the how and why of meditation. It helps us to understand the how and why of um, getting sleep. It helps us to understand the how and why of proper nutrition. It helps us to understand all of those areas that we truly understand make us who we actually are, how it influences what we do from day to day, from moment to moment when we actually are engaging with other people. You do not need to be a psychologist to understand this. You do not need to be a doctor. You do not need to be a counselor. If you're a coach, this actually is going to enhance your coaching. If you are a teacher, it enhances your teaching. If you are a wife or a husband, it enhances all of those um, uh, things that we do within those environments to be better at what we're actually doing. So really, really, really important and really, really useful and helpful. Okay, there's one. Let's see. Will this give me some tools to be far more effective as a coach? Yes. If so, how will this course do that? We will teach you, at least for level 1, 4 primary tools that will help you see you first and foremost, and help you see your client. It'll help you see your client from a neuroscience perspective. What's going on in the brain of that person that you've just entered into with a relationship with, because ultimately you are changing their brain. Whether we knew it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we now know that we're actually changing that person's brain. So being in a position where we can actually understand what they're going through, we can then better ask more powerful questions. We can put ourselves in a position to understand if we want to give some field work to that individual that will allow them to be able to be more productive, or allow them to come out of this agitated, fearful state, and to put them in a more powerful state. So that's some very powerful ways that the tools will actually help another person become more successful in life. All right, we have 3 minutes remaining. Is there anything? Yes, is this ICF affiliated? We're not ICF affiliated, but you will get CCEs. Well, I guess in that case, it does make us affiliated because most of us organizations that ask for CCEs have to go through them anyway. Any other questions? All right, Rajiv, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Well, thank you, Don and Tanya.
Just a second, Rajiv, there is another question from Anita there.
Okay. So the question is, the routine question is about the CCUs associated with this program. I'm already a PCC with about 2,000 hours of coaching. I'm looking at clearing MCC when I become eligible. Will this give me the training hours required?
That's a question for Priya, I think.
Yep.
But yes, Anita, you do get some hours. I mean, not some hours, but there are going to be some CCEs with this. I just don't know how many they actually are, but we can make sure that you do get that information. We did have a brand new MCC in one just last month, and she had just been granted her MCC the second week of, I think, of the course. So I don't know how many she actually gets from that, since she's actually now has acquired her MCC. But yes, you will be able to get some.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, we are right on time. I just want to thank once again Tanya for joining us early in the morning, and Don for staying up late, trying to find a time slot which works for Canada and Australia. Not the easiest thing, but you guys made it work. So thank you so much. And thank you to all the participants. Really appreciate, and I hope you found these, this 1 hour useful, and were able to take away some key messages about and key learnings about neuroscience. If you have a desire to get into certification, feel free to drop me a mail, and we'll provide you the information. Because of COVID, there is an opportunity. We are running this certification program virtually, which enables us to, of course, reach out to lots of people, and also at a much lower cost than it normally would be. Now, with that, thank you everyone, and good night, Don, and everyone else. Have a great evening or day. Bye for now.
All right. Take you. See you, everyone.
Bye.